Hey guys, it's Bombbuster72 back again. This time I want to tell you guys a story. On this day in 2008, the Battle of Wanat, Afghanistan took place. I was not at the Battle of Wanat, as you'll hear later. I was probably supposed to be there, but for some reason, divine intervention, I don't know what, I didn't end up being there. So the information in this story, it comes out of a document that was released by the United States Army Combat Studies Institute, as well as my own personal notes and my own personal story. So to start out with, I want to explain a little bit of a backstory about this. There was an operation called Rock Move, and this is where Task Force Rock, they were moving their presence in the Waigal Valley from Combat Outpost Bella. They were moving down to the village of Wanat, a little bit closer to Fob Blessing, a little bit further south. The move into Wanat actually started on July 8th, and on the evening of the 8th, a convoy took place, ended up at the village of Wanat, and they started to set up in a location where Cop Kaler was eventually going to be built. Every spare bit of room that they had, they took extra ammo, water, food, that sort of thing, as well as sandbags and other things to help with the defense. When they got there late at night. Really all they had a chance to do was kind of set up a little bit of a security perimeter around their vehicles and then pretty much bed down for the night. The following day, the field where they were going to set up the combat outpost, they swept that for IEDs as well as mines, and they started setting up a perimeter. They started setting up defensive measures. Later that afternoon, some Chinook helicopters came in, brought the remaining troops, more supplies, and that sort of thing so they could continue their work. Now, the next few days, it was really hot. The ground was rocky. It was really hard to dig in. A convoy of jingle trucks, and for those of you who don't understand what I'm talking about, jingle trucks are civilian vehicles over there. They're decorated all blinged out. Pretty crazy looking. I'll see if I can find a picture and put one up here for you guys. But they were supposed to convoy up there with additional supplies, a bunch of HESCO barriers, a bunch of food, water, all that kind of stuff to continue constructing defensive measures. Now, this convoy of vehicles was supposed to be preceded by a route clearance package. Route clearance package number 8, which was out of Asadabad. This was supposed to go ahead of them and clear the road, make sure that they were safe as they traveled up there. A couple of days prior in the Chowkay Valley, that route clearance package struck an IED. Their platoon sergeant was killed, and so they were in a stand down and they were not traveling during that time. Now the reason why I even mention route clearance package 8 is because this was the unit that I was later attached to just a couple of days after this. On the 8th, when they started doing all this move and during the subsequent days while they were building up measures, I was at Bagram Air Base. I was in processing through Joint Task Force Paladin, which that's wearing my Paladin hat today. I was spending my time in a classroom. I was doing a bunch of in-processing and stuff like that. Now I want to tell you a little bit about the location. Cop Kaler was located in the Waigal Valley, and this is actually at the junction of, there's a little creek, and it runs into the Waigal River. The Waigal River continues south and empties into the Pesh River. At that opening of the Waigal Valley, where those rivers combine, that's where Fob Blessing is located. Further to the east is Asadabad, and that is where I would later be assigned. Cop Kaler was set up pretty close to the village of Wanat, just south of there, and the reason why it was set up so close, they really wanted to get in with the population. They wanted to really interact with them a lot. As well, there were 2 bridges that crossed the rivers there, and this was important for traffic traveling up and down the Waigal Valley. They were there really to protect those bridges as well as to interact with the local populace. Cop Kaler was located on a valley floor, for the most part on the valley floor, and there is some ridiculous mountains on every side of them. I mean, we're talking 10,000 foot high ridges on all 4 sides, really. Just because of the shape of the valley, they're completely surrounded by high ground. The COP was roughly the size of a football field, and later they would create an outpost. They called this OP Topside, and it was about 25 by 25 meters and about 50 to 60 meters away from the main COP. On July 12th, the day before the battle, I arrived at Camp Wright in Asadabad. I spent my day pretty much meeting everybody, also transferring and signing for all of the sensitive items, all the crew served weapons, our classified crypto equipment, all that kind of stuff. I was officially assigned to Joint Task Force Paladin Counter IED Team 2, which was located on Camp Wright just outside of Asadabad. But I was farmed out to Route Clearance Package 8 to assist them in their mission of clearing the routes. There was one other EOD team that was assigned there as well, but they were responsible for any 9-line IED and UXO responses. on the night of the 12th, at about 2200 hours, we were supposed to do a route clearance mission from Camp Wright up to Fob Blessing and then continue on up to Cop Kaler. This was so that convoy of jingle trucks could finally make it up to that location. Sometime in the afternoon of the 12th, it started to really pour down rain at Asadabad. When we started our mission at about 10 p.m., 2200 hours, the lead vehicle, we were just barely outside the gate, and the lead vehicle, which was a Husky mine search vehicle, he radioed back to the rest of the convoy and said the road had washed away and that there was a large chasm where the rain had washed the road away. The Husky did attempt to cross this and proceeded to get stuck. That Husky ended up staying there overnight until they could actually get a front end loader out the next day and pull it out of there. But because of this, our mission was canceled. It was going to take us about 3 or 4 hours to do our mission all the way up to Cop Kaler. We were going to then sleep in our vehicles and probably return about noon the next day. If we would have gone, we would have been there when this attack was initiated, or possibly our presence would have averted that attack. I don't know, and I guess we'll never really know what would have happened. A local who was friendly to Americans, he had been friendly to other Americans who'd been in the area, he actually notified them that they were going to be attacked. Now this sounds like a huge deal, but you got to understand that this happens honestly daily. It happens daily, and of course they're going to be attacked. He couldn't give a timeline, he didn't know when, but yes, of course there's enemy in the area, and of course they're going to be attacked. So on the 13th of July at 03:45, the COP, they had a stand to. A stand to is, for those of you who don't know, this is where everybody gets ready. It's before dawn. This is a typical time when people get attacked. So everybody gets ready. Everybody's awake. They're full battle rattle. They're all ready to go. They're watching. It's quiet. They're observing. They're looking for the enemy. And honestly, if it wasn't for this stand to, I think there would have been a lot more casualties because everybody was awake, and otherwise there would have been people really caught unaware. They would have been asleep and had to react. Instead, they were ready and kind of waiting for it. The same stand to was taking place at OP Topside. I didn't mention, but OP Topside was located on some terraces that kind of overlooked the main combat outpost. The problem was it wasn't at the very top terrace. There were terraces that were higher, and beyond those, about 10 meters beyond that perimeter of OP Topside, directly to the west and the north was a very deep ravine, and they had no observation of this ravine whatsoever. They couldn't see into it. They couldn't even really see the ravine at all. And it's believed that this is where enemy forces were able to enter the area. And in fact, they were able to get really close. They were in buildings that were directly adjacent to the main combat outpost. And eventually they worked their way in, and they were actually between OP Topside and Cop Kaler. They worked into some buildings, a bazaar, and they were actually located between those two American outposts. There was also a contingent of ANA soldiers. This is Afghan National Army, and they had 3 Marines who were with them. This was their training team, their advisors, and they also performed a stand to at the same time. During the stand to, there was a tow missile vehicle, and it was located about the middle of the main COP, and it observed some possible enemy movement to the south. Once they figured out that, yes, these are probably enemy, and they finally got the go-ahead to engage, and this was approximately 0420, they were attacked. They were attacked actually before they could engage. And this started out with a burst of machine gun fire. And this is a typical thing. The enemy in Afghanistan, they do perform radio discipline. They're radio silent, and they usually initiate their attacks. They coordinate that effort with a burst of machine gun fire. And once that machine gun fire started, it was immediately followed by a large volley of RPGs. One of the soldiers present, he commented that it seemed like thousands of RPGs being fired. Another soldier said that it seemed like the RPGs were coming as fast as fully automatic machine gun fire. So it was an intense initial first few seconds of that fight. In that first volley, most of their crew-served weapons, as well as their mortars and their tow vehicle, they were targeted. In the very first seconds of the attack, the tow vehicle was hit, destroyed, and burned pretty much the rest of the battle. The crew were able to get out, and none of those people were killed. They were injured, however, but they were able to get out, and they went to the Tactical Operations Center, the TOC, where the main headquarters for the outpost was located. The 120 millimeter mortar, it was kind of facing mostly to the west. That's where its field of fire was located. And it was able to get off 4 mortars before they were just really inundated with so much RPG fire. And they had a ammunition supply point. Once that was hit, they really needed to get out of that area. So they were able to get out. They had a bunch of wounded, and one member of that crew later died, and he was the only person who died on Kop Kaler. All the rest of the KIAs would take place at OP Topside. OP Topside had really, it was a minimal defense. All the protective works, all of the sandbags were around the firing points. Everything else was pretty much open, except for they had a bed down area where people could take a break and rest, maybe take a little nap, and that also had sandbags around it. But they didn't have any overhead protection whatsoever. The rest of the perimeter was a single strand of concertina wire, and there were some large boulders that also provided a little bit of cover. At one point in the battle, OP Topside was occupied by 1 living American, and he was presumed dead. He was actually unconscious, and he was presumed to be dead. He later came to, radioed for help, and 2 QRFs at different times stood up and left Kop Kaler and went to OP Topside to try to help him out. A lot of the casualties came from those QRFs, including their platoon commander. Kop Kaler was actually set up as a priority for artillery out of Fob Blessing. However, the enemy was so close, really that artillery was mostly ineffective. All they could do, they were able to seal off the area, all the different little valley entrances, and prevent enemy reinforcements from coming in, but they really couldn't do anything because they were so close to the U.S. soldiers. The Battle of Wanat continued for over 3.5 hours and really only ended once helicopter gunships were able to get on station and were able to really drive the enemy off. At the end of the battle, 9 Americans died, 1 at Kop Kaler and 8 at OP Topside, and there were 27 Americans wounded. There were an additional 4 Afghan National Army wounded. And it's believed that there were 50 enemy KIA and about another 50 wounded. Now, one issue is there was only 1 found. The enemy typically, they carry their dead from the battlefield, and they do this for propaganda reasons, to say that nobody died. The one that was left behind, he was stuck in the concertina wire, and they couldn't get him out of there. But I hope you guys will take a moment today and remember these guys and remember the sacrifice that they gave for their brothers and for all of us, really. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, take care and be safe.